Hello and welcome to CLEAResult's webinar series. Today's topic is Midstream Beyond Lighting with Enbridge Gas.
Thank you, Emily. So we're really pleased to have Deanna Marley join us today. She's a senior advisor with the Commercial Industrial Program Design team at Enbridge Gas. With over 20 years of experience in the energy sector, including program design, program management, account management, as well as channel sales and marketing to both residential and commercial sectors, Deanna is currently focused on deemed savings programs for commercial customers. She currently lives with her husband and two kids in the township of Rideau Lakes, north of Kingston, Ontario. We also have Brennan Suddaby on the panel. He comes from an electrical distributor background as a lighting specialist focused on championing rebates on behalf of contractors. He joined CLEAResult in 2019 as a member of the Midstream Outreach team, was instrumental in building momentum and results for the program in non-lighting sectors, and he's been leading the effort as program manager since mid-2021. He currently lives in Barrie, Ontario, and on his time off enjoys hiking, touring with his motorcycle, and playing D&D with friends. And lastly, I'll be your host, Katie Fotheringham. I've been working on energy efficiency programs since 2008. I had the good fortune of joining CLEAResult in 2019 and now support the team as practice consulting director. I live in Toronto and enjoy hula hoops, ukuleles, and roller skating in my free time. So for today's agenda, we will be dividing the presentation into two sections. So we can go to the next slide there, Emily. We'll start by providing background on how the Enbridge Midstream program has evolved in Ontario, factors that have driven the success, and briefly touch on program to date results. In the second section, we'll be diving into challenges we faced, challenges that you are likely facing in your own midstream programs, and the strategies or perspectives that have helped us overcome them. As Emily mentioned, if you have any questions, feel free to pop them into the chat and we'll get to them at the end during the discussion period. So let's start with a little bit of background. Just a quick level set for anyone unfamiliar with the nuances between mid and downstream programming. Midstream generally focuses on influencing the sale or presentation of the product, whereas downstream influences the purchase by the end user. So midstream programs typically target the middle portion of the supply chain by contracting with distributors, dealers, or contractors who receive the incentives, often passing a portion of it onto the end user. So rather than targeting mass markets and intaking and reviewing individual applications in downstream programs that can take up to 60 days to result in rebate checks, midstream programs receive data on eligible sales that, subject to QA/QC, result in bulk payments back to the distributor within a short 10-day turnaround. It's really about changing the menu of what's available. Deanna, maybe you can jump in with just a little bit about Enbridge's motivation for moving measures from down to midstream.
Yeah, absolutely, Katie. I mean, a midstream program was raised with Enbridge as an opportunity for us to move our engagement of our DSM programs up the supply chain. So what you were mentioning, as far as enabling a one-to-many approach, it is a program design that we had not seen in Ontario for natural gas or electric. And when we reviewed it in other jurisdictions in North America, we had noted that it was very effective at enabling not only units that were planned, but more importantly, unplanned unit uptake. So part of our rationale in taking a step back and thinking about midstream for Enbridge in Ontario, we looked at the performance of our current prescriptive downstream measures. We gathered some insights from internal and external stakeholders. And then we looked at past market assessments to really identify where the opportunities might exist for a midstream model versus a downstream model. And in the end, Enbridge decided to move 3 HVAC equipment offers and 3 food service equipment offers from our prescriptive downstream offer to a new midstream prescriptive offer in July of 2019.
Great, thank you. And that's a good segue actually into our next slide on the actual kind of timeline and background. So we launched the program with Enbridge in late 2019, focusing really on those 2 key sectors that Deanna mentioned, HVAC and food service. In early 2021, the Independent Electricity System Operator, the IESO, they're the organization that lead electricity conservation in the province. They joined the program as a way to pilot refrigeration measures in a midstream model. And so this was a bit of a unique joint collaboration between the 2 entities. And we'll talk a little bit about how that translated into collaborative marketing efforts later in the presentation. But essentially between 2021 and today, the program has evolved. Measures have been added, some have been removed, and Despite a global pandemic and other challenges, as of today, the participants enrolled in the program represent 90% market share within each sector. And of course, there's a lot of work, pre-work and planning that goes into the launch that predates this timeline, including about 6 months of implementation, strategy development, and market stakeholder engagements. The point being that it does take time to undertake comprehensive market characterization studies, and then to enroll, train, and onboard. It's an investment for all parties, for participants to understand their products, identify eligible products, and familiarize themselves with the administrative requirements. But I'll pass it over now to Brennan to walk you through the eligible measures, incentives, and supply chain structures specific to this program. Brennan?
Yeah, thanks, Katie and Deanna. So on our next slide here, we've got our measures and the incentives listed for your reference, but I want to bring it back to what Deanna mentioned. We did launch in the food service and HVAC sectors with only 3 product categories for the sector. This was really to help the dealers and distributors understand what we were trying to accomplish with them, get a strong foundation, and then grow the program from there. So as you can see in the food service space, we really did expand that offering as the market kind of evolved and got a little bit more used to what we're trying to achieve. And we really strengthened the value proposition with the dealers, distributors, end users, and most importantly, the manufacturers. Really understanding that entire chain helped increase our adoption and the value proposition for the market. So I'll speak a little bit on the sectors here on the next slides. And what I want to stress here on the next couple of slides is really understanding the sectors that you're trying to engage with. Right here, we're talking about HVAC and food service. But again, what I want to stress is understanding the entire chain that you're trying to engage with. In these examples, you can see that the manufacturer is at the top, and then it kind of filters down from there, both in who we're engaging with and the number of parties involved. We really want to stress the involvement of the manufacturers in this process and the value proposition that we can show with those people when engaging. It really enables kind of a soft handshake into dealing with the distributors and dealers that are working within the program. Really helps evolve that conversation and helps you engage and get a leg up. And I believe Deanna can offer some perspective from the utility here too.
Thanks, Brennan. I think obviously there's value in formalizing our relationships with the supply chain. As I mentioned earlier, it's that value of that one-to-many approach. There are customers in our space, commercial, that maybe do not warrant a full account manager service. So how do you reach deeper into more customers? There's also efficiencies that are created through this type of model and really understanding, engaging the supply chain. So in what we've built with CLEAResult, CLEAResult manages our relationships with our participants. And they also, as Katie mentioned, pay the incentives within 10 days, which is something we as a utility have a challenge doing. But then, on our side, we process one monthly payment to CLEAResult in comparison to if this was a downstream program, could potentially be hundreds of individual incentive processing from an administrative side of the program internally for Enbridge. When you talk about the supply chain and the value of the supply chain and building our relationship, one of the things we did when we kicked off the program was have a discretionary incentive. And that was important for our participants because it allowed them to determine how much incentive they wanted to keep to offset costs associated with standing up the program, staffing, training their staff, as well as ordering more expensive product and keeping it on the shelf. And then just also upgrading their systems for the reporting and the processes we put in place. So, the incentive was really important in understanding that supply chain. And one of the things we learned was that participants in the end, even though it was discretionary, ended up passing through a similar amount of incentive. So it created a bit of competition in that a participant didn't want to pass through less than their competitor. And it also helped us a little bit with awareness of non-participants. So non-participants in a very competitive supply chain model will want to say, what am I missing out on? What could I be passing through? And it really brought some participants to our attention and got a little bit more engagement through our program. So the supply chain was very interesting, and we've learned a lot along the way.
Absolutely. So jumping to the next slide here as well, I want to highlight a bit of the difference between the HVAC and the food service space. We don't have to get into the details here, but just understanding that there are differences on how the sectors engage with the end users, whether it's through contractors or directly to those end user purchasers. Understanding the nuance there really starts with the manufacturers. They know their sectors best, they can make those introductions, and ultimately by selling the value proposition of a midstream approach with the manufacturers and the dealers, you get more robust feedback as well that you can action on, whether you're looking for sales data, whether you're looking for new measures, whatever it is within that sector.
Great, well, thank you both. We'll go to the next slide here because next we want to share 5 kind of key drivers for success that have helped the program gain traction and results. And we're going to tackle these one by one, starting with value creation that Deanna already kind of hinted at. So we'll just move to the next slide, please. So one of the key learnings that we really want to share is the importance of providing a clear and compelling value proposition to participants. We've come to view the enrolled distributors not just as participants, but really as partners in administering the program. Partners that need to see the value in their participation and get buy-in from all levels of their organization. So to overcome the administrative barriers and build interest and buy-in, the participating distributors retain a portion of the incentive that allows them to reinvest in program operations or marketing. We also found that once the value proposition was clear, identifying and working with a program champion within each participating distributor really helped to increase results and accuracy of submissions. There may be different value propositions depending on the size of the distributors. Big distributors have multiple locations, so they're a great place to start in terms of recruitment and enrollment, and the incentive can help them make any system or data tracking modifications that will lead to smoother submissions. We'll go ahead to the next sort of key learning. I'll pass this one over to Brennan to talk about onboarding.
Absolutely, and kind of feeding off exactly what you said here, integrating with those manufacturers and the C-level at the start is really key. As soon as we get buy-in from the top of the organization, they can assign a champion that really keeps people accountable. It really makes a much more meaningful impact further on in the program in selling the value proposition. Having someone hold those people that are really boots on the ground upselling to those eligible products, holding them accountable to the process that the organization has developed is key. As part of our approach to onboarding, we really did start with some of the larger players, just knowing, again, as Katie mentioned, that they're a little bit larger, they have a little bit more momentum to get started, and they have a little bit more momentum within the organization and within the sector about pushing other people to become involved. If you're tackling the big fish, other people are going to move along to remain competitive. There were several things that we noted within the organizations in being comprehensive, being convenient, and tailored to the business. You really need to understand whether you have someone that's, say, a large national organization that is very robust reporting, or you have a mom and pop shop that is passing a piece of paper from one desk to the other. You really need to tailor your approach and give them the tools to be successful in doing so. There isn't a one-size-fits-all.
Speaking of tools, we'll go to the next slide.
Move to the next slide here. I want to highlight 2 of the key pieces that really empower the participants in the program. The first one being making sure they're selling an eligible piece of equipment. Our online portal makes that very quick, whether you're working from a curated custom list or referencing back to AHRI, DLC, or Energy Star. They can be confident that the product that they're offering a discount on is eligible. We can then also work on qualifying the customer, the end-use customer, of where that piece is being installed. A quick search returns a validation code that a utility is able to work with to help us provide. In qualifying that address, making sure that we have a qualified equipment being installed at a qualifying address, they're comfortable in passing on that discount. We can move to the next slide here too. And this all feeds to our upselling efforts. And part of that early phase I really want to stress is having a strong foundation. We need to make sure that we're doing proactive quality assurance. We want to make sure that we're helping them do their uploading and troubleshooting any issues they might have with sales and customizing some marketing. Again, this gives a strong foundation on being comfortable in passing along a discount. For a larger organization, they have to make sure that money's coming back to them and within 10 days, if that's happening consistently. Then they can take those next steps once they've matured and they've got ongoing processes to really making robust changes within the organization, whether that's through efforts like gamification, really level setting where they stand within the program and how they're competing against other people that are also trying to upsell, or really focusing on unit level upselling efforts to show the value proposition of that equipment. And I believe Deanna can offer a little bit more perspective as well.
Thanks, Brennan. You know, when I think about our approach to upselling and I think about what we've accomplished since July 2019, really at the beginning, our focus was a lot of QA, QC. You know, we despite our understanding of the equipment in a downstream program model and our efforts to gather insights and look at market research, it really did, onboarding and training took longer than expected. To the points that Brennan had called out previously, there are just some participants that are very complex and took a longer time to set up the program within their existing processes. CLEAResult's online dashboard is absolutely easy to use. The participants could quickly validate equipment, addresses, and apply for incentives. But one of the things that we learned was that some of our participants just don't know what product qualified or is Energy Star, to link that back to a SKU, a make, or a model. So for some of our participants, just working with them to create a qualified list of products was a significant lift. But in the end, it also became one of our most powerful tools, one of our most valuable tools for our participants. There's no question that, you know, retailers and distributors know how to sell product. What our challenge was taking them from just ordering and selling products where they would have an order coming in to really becoming salespeople and upselling customers based on energy and the product that qualified on our lists. So as we matured the program and as we look to the future, we're really looking at how can we continue to add that value for our participants so it continues to be top of mind in their sales process, how they engage with customers, as well as how they train their staff. But also how can we as Enbridge create more tools for training as well as for sales to further support their efforts in selling energy efficiency over, say, the standard or the more comfortable product that a customer might be familiar with.
Well, and again, that's another good segue, Deanna, especially as you mentioned, you know, some of the benefits of helping them to sell through things like collateral. So if we move to the next slide, as you recall, I mentioned that the IESO joined as a pilot in early 2021, and this really offered some benefits of collaboration between electric and gas utilities. Deanna, if you're comfortable speaking to this, I'll pass it over to you.
Yeah, absolutely, Katie. I mean, as a natural gas distributor in Ontario, Enbridge is encouraged to work with our independent electric system operator here in Ontario, the IESO. So in early 2021, Enbridge and IESO worked together to offer both gas and electric offers under our Foodservice Midstream program. Obviously, there's value for us in collaborating, but it was also that joint delivery through CLEAResult. So for our participants, they were able to apply for incentives for both gas and electric using the same dashboard we had created for our offers. We included the electric offers as well. So this really was it was an interesting pilot. It has been a good partnership in that it adds that value that we've been speaking to for participants. So the more offers and equipment you have for a participant, the more attention that it may give them. There might be more of their product line that they carry that is available for an incentive that then prompts them to be more top of mind with their sales staff. And it also becomes more familiar in their day-to-day process if there's more opportunities to engage with customers through these offers.
Absolutely.
Great, thank you. We'll go ahead now and just move and briefly touch on program to date results, starting with Enbridge. So you can see here the difference between, these are units that are being displayed between the food service and the HVAC sector. Anything, Brennan or Deanna, you'd like to add here?
I can jump in here. I would say that this truly does show that our efforts in 2019 and 2020 to really stand up, on board, and train really paid off or started to pay off in 2020 and 2021 for food service despite the pandemic. But we are seeing the long-term impacts of the pandemic on the supply chain and the food service industry this year. So we are seeing a bit of that now. We had indications that it was coming, so we had anticipated that this would happen, but you can really sort of see how it took us some time to build up and grow the program. I would say for HVAC, you are seeing a decline in our results. However, that wasn't due to the program. That was due to Enbridge's decision to proactively remove a measure from our offer. Our challenge going forward is how to continue to add value to our participants. And we have research underway to investigate other measure offers. We're hoping to add to the offer in 2023.
Great, thank you so much. We'll just briefly showcase as well the IESO measure results, which were mostly focused on refrigeration, freezers, and ice machines. And this one's being displayed on a month-by-month basis. So really in a very short period of time, we ended up moving about 3,600 plus measures through that program, through a variety of different sectors that participated.
Before we leave this slide, Katie, I do want to call out too, beyond just units, Enbridge has also taken a step back to look at our results, to really look at the type of customers that have been engaged through midstream versus our downstream model. And we have noted an increase in customers that we've been able to reach through midstream that have never participated in our DSM programs in the past. As well as we've noted that businesses that are participating in midstream, there are a large portion of them that we would call small businesses. So for Enbridge, we define small businesses as businesses that use 100,000 cubic meters of gas per year or less. So this type of a midstream model has been able to reach more customers who haven't participated in our program, as well as smaller customers. So the idea of one-to-many in order to get to customers that may or may not warrant an account manager relationship, and it's more of a transactional type relationship, we are seeing the benefits of this type of a model with our smaller customers as well as non-participants. I just wanted to call that out before we move on.
Great. All right, well, we're going to move into the second section now, part 2. We're going to dig into the challenges we faced and the strategies or perspectives that helped to overcome them. So let's just start with the big one, a global pandemic right in the middle of program delivery. As you all know, I'm sure, this had widespread impacts throughout both our society and our economies, and had significant impacts on the food service sector in particular. A lot of jobs were lost in this sector, and restaurants are still struggling with labor shortages today, which has actually presented an interesting opportunity for the program, considering the nature of the measures we're incenting. But I'll let Brennan speak to how we pivoted to digital engagements and filling the gap of some labor shortages with automation equipment. Brennan?
Absolutely, thanks, Katie. So on the next slide, we can call out really 3 key areas of success that we tried to drive more adoption with. The first one is web-hosted events. So just like GoTo, just like Teams, we're able to reach a broader audience, through digital efforts, and really leveraging that opportunity for recorded sessions allows people to view some of these training, upsell, equipment sessions on demand at their own pace, rather than trying to book off a set period of time that they might be strained to find. They can really sit down and consume the content when they have a moment. The next part here is really trying to leverage the shift towards programs like Uber Eats. A lot of what happened here, we removed, or the ability to have a sit-down restaurant was removed. So a lot of these restaurants focused on things like digital delivery or things like ghost kitchens, where there is no front of house staff. In doing so, they really changed the products that they had in their kitchen, which was an opportunity to focus more on digital controls. And a lot of these products that have digital controls come with higher energy benefits, a little bit more bells and whistles. So being able to interject ourselves in that decision-making process led to the opportunity to really focus on more high efficient product. And in doing so as well, focusing on a lot of those areas where we see some of the labor shortages, a lot of these products that have the extra bells and whistles can focus on more thoroughfare for their food being delivered at a higher efficiency rate, which results in less staff being needed in those kitchen spaces. So it's really an opportunity to address those buying habits, the stocking habits that the dealers are making to support them, and choose a better product at that time.
Thanks, Brennan. Let's move on to our second big challenge, supply chain issues and general pricing increases. So there were really a lot of factors that were driving this, including geopolitical conflicts in areas where some of the qualified equipment is manufactured, shipping container cost increases, Suez Canal blockages, etc. But the result has been nothing short of a challenge to the program, quite frankly. Equipment lead times have been delayed, costs have gone up. Some manufacturers are asking for payment up front, and with limited eligible products in stock, dealers have shifted focus to filling orders with whatever they can get their hands on. And all of this, of course, leads to uncertainty in forecasting. But there is some hope on the horizon if we can kind of put a positive spin on it, and I'll kick that back to Brennan.
And that's it. And we spoke of this a little bit earlier, is really trying to get the participants, so the dealers, the distributors, when they're making those decisions. Deanna mentioned earlier that they can be in a rut of purchasing what they're used to purchasing. Market disruptions like this give us an opportunity to reevaluate that conversation. If they can no longer get their hands on the products that they're used to ordering, it's an opportunity to have a broader conversation around purchasing different products. That opportunity, again, if we look at supply chain opportunities that we have, we focus on the high efficient equipment. We are able to stock that proactively going forward and really change the offers that they're giving to their end use customers. I think Deanna might have a bit more perspective as well.
Yeah, I would also say too, when you think about the focus of the long term, obviously in the short term, we've developed a relationship with the supply chain. There's no doubt the pandemic created challenges for us. But what we're looking at is on the upside, how can these relationships, to what Brendan has mentioned, can help us to further identify future opportunities and a path forward. So it gives us time to act before you see that further down in the supply chain impacting actual installations and units. One of the ways that we're looking at addressing that in the long term is completing another market assessment, so we can really better understand that long-term effect of the pandemic on the supply chain, beyond what's happened, but how has that changed their behaviors and how they're interacting between manufacturers, distributor, retailers, to the end user. And one of the things that we're looking at exploring again is formalizing our relationship with manufacturers. So in our current program, we started at the top with manufacturers to identify their key retailers and distributors. But by having a more formal relationship with manufacturers, we're hoping that there could be some opportunities there for Enbridge to really work with them to encourage more production of eligible product. Is there space for us to work with them to certify more products so it's eligible, or third-party test more products so it's more eligible for our programs? But also making sure that what they produce is available to our participants. So making sure that our midstream participants have access and are shipped quantities of the eligible product too. And when you think about it from a long-term perspective for participants, midstream sometimes is looked at as stocking. So in a world where participants are struggling, or there's capital constraints and they don't have a lot of money to carry a lot of stock on their shelves, is one of the roles we can play is ordering. So if they have one space on that shelf, how often are they turning over that space? Can we increase the frequency of turnover? Can we also look at what other products they're ordering in comparison to the products that we offer in our program? So in the long term, I think midstream, in our ability to have those relationships from manufacturer all the way down to retailers who in food service ultimately sell to end users, it gives us a bit more proactive and agile, right? So we can see things coming, we have some time to act, and we have some time to put some things in place. Whereas in downstream, we may not see the impact of the supply chain until it may have been too late, right? You see a decline in results, you see a decline in installations, but that really is months after the root cause. And so your ability to shift and turn is, maybe slightly decreased through a purely downstream model.
That's really helpful perspective, Deanna. Thank you for sharing. We'll move on to another challenge that has been kind of interesting. We've experienced is really regulatory changes in the burden of testing. So as I'm sure you've likely seen, many of you on the call, Energy Star legislation and baselines are all evolving. And this can render entire products or product categories ineligible or simply cost ineffective. So when qualified products lists reduce, the value to participants can also reduce. So really continuing to have efficient measures added to your programs is critical. We've also seen that the cost and the time to achieve Energy Star certification is sometimes viewed as a barrier with some manufacturers. This isn't to say that the measures they offer don't meet Energy Star requirements, but they can be excluded from the program if the program doesn't have any alternative paths to certification. I'll pass it back to Brennan really to speak to how this can also be kind of flipped into a bit of an opportunity.
Absolutely. And I think Deanna actually spoke on a lot of the key points here too, is reinforcing those relationships with the manufacturers. If we can work with them to identify potential products that have underwent third-party testing, but were never actually listed on that certifying body, something like an Energy Star, we can actually work with the utility to review that product. And if they meet the testing requirements, then we can have them added into the program. In doing that, we really reinforce the value proposition of the program with the expanded reach, going back to a dealer who may be aware of that product and, again, really didn't know the nuance of that product's efficiency. We can reinforce the value proposition of the program and adding those products proactively. This also increases the value to the manufacturers and opens the door to identifying any new products that are coming down the pipeline. If they're working on something that they might not be willing to share to the broader market, they might come to us proactively to say, hey, we have this coming, it's high efficient. Is this something that a utility might be willing to get behind to help change the market before it's really there? And so it opens the door to broadening the scope of what we can do. And again, reinforcing the value of a program like this to the manufacturers, to the dealers, and ultimately to the end users.
Great, thank you. Well, so the last challenge that we're going to touch on in this webinar is sales data. So each participant typically has unique reporting models. They don't always track identifiers like eligible versus non-eligible sales. The data is rarely complete or comprehensive enough to accurately measure lift. And of course, one of the biggest challenges with sales data is confidentiality and general unwillingness to share sensitive sales data. Furthermore, the pandemic has impacted both pricing and lead time. So counting on historic sales as a proxy for forecasting is not always as reliable as it once was, but there are some strategies that we can employ to overcome this challenge. And I'll kick it back on over to Brennan to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. We can see on the slide here being shown a couple examples of what data looks like. And I mean, to me, the first time I saw this, it was not meaningful. Really didn't know how to digest this. As we've mentioned earlier, I think Deanna touched on it, the dealers really don't have a toggle on their dashboards to say, this is efficient, this is non-efficient. So I think focusing on building the value proposition and starting to leverage the relationship and potentially existing program data can work to establish trends with the dealers. They can really give you a broader perspective of the landscape of what you're selling into. If you work with the manufacturers to understand the trends as well, they really know the sectors, they know where things are headed. If you showcase the value of the program and the type of information that you're looking for, they'll be a little bit more open to working with you to establish those trends and give you meaningful insights. Alternatively, trying to work with customer surveys, so participant surveys at that point. So again, maybe confidentiality, they're not able to give you unit level data, but by leveraging the information that you do have through a survey approach, you might be able to establish trends or gain some additional perspective into how things are being sold and where people are placing their value in the product.
And then we'll just gotta pop to the next slide that Brennan was just kind of talking about, just to sort of flash that one up there. Just again, leveraging existing program sales data, leveraging distributor surveys. It's really about kind of getting creative to help fill in the gaps where sales data just simply may not be available or usable. But we're going to actually just move to the final slide here before entering into our discussion and Q&A. And just to summarize, we want to leave you with the following key learnings that will hopefully help you drive success in your own midstream programs, whether you have established programs that are shifting to new sectors, or for those of you just getting started on your midstream journey. Understanding the market and the key players, and empower and support your delivery agent, not just your CLEAResult, but the participating distributors. Provide them with a clear value proposition and set up internal program champions within each enrolled participant, and foster those relationships. Use those opportunities to proactively gather feedback. This could be, as we mentioned, on new and emerging technologies or measures, gaining valuable insights into lead times or delays or shifts in stocking practices. And lastly, leverage program sales activities and surveys. Use this to understand how the market may be changing, how sales practices shift through the influence of the program, and then adjust forecasts accordingly. embodying agility and having the right tools, people, and processes in place are the foundation of any successful program. So I want to sincerely thank both Deanna and Brennan, and really all of the CLEAResult Midstream teams for sharing their insights and learnings. We hope you found this informative, but we're happy to take any questions that you may have in this sort of follow-up section. So I have seen that there are a few questions that have started to roll in, and we might just start with a hard-hitting one from Sherry Kelly from Excel Energy. Sherry asks a few questions here. How much lift did the program see from moving from downstream to midstream? What was the net benefit impact for the product? Did we only target manufacturers, or did we also include end-use contractors in the midstream equipment dealers? So let's maybe start with the last question around did we only target manufacturers, or did we include end-use contractors in the midstream equipment dealers?
I can try to take a stab at that if you want, Katie, just to start. And Brennan, please add color commentary. So the midstream program for HVAC, the participant is the distributor. For the midstream food service program, the participant is the food service retailer. However, for execution of the program in the market, we started with manufacturers, and we did that purposefully because we wanted to understand of the manufacturers that we knew that had eligible product according to our TRM. We were engaging their dealers that they were selling that product to, so we could go after the people that they go to market strategies for the eligible product. We also went after the biggest players first, to what Brennan was saying earlier, and we did that again purposely. So if the larger distributors will go and there's value, there is at a very competitive market in the supply chain that helped us get some of the the ones that were sort of, I'm not sure, we're not sure if we're going to go, and they ended up coming on board. So for midstream, for Enbridge, HVAC is distributors and food services retailers. With regards to lift from downstream to midstream, lift is a tough one to nail down. I do not have the numbers in front of me. I can tell you that in downstream, for the same measures, so remembering we started with 3 in HVAC and 3 in food service, for the same measures, the 3 years prior, and then if I look at the 3 years after we started in midstream, there were more units. So from a units perspective, yes, there was an increase in units. Percentage, I don't have that number in front of me, but the other value that we were going after beyond units was reaching a type of customer that we were not reaching historically through our account managed approach. So more of those transactional type customers where something breaks down, or they're in a moment of decision and they go into a retailer, and if that Energy Star equipment isn't on the shelf, they're not going to interrupt their business in order to wait 3 or 4 weeks for an Energy Star fryer to show up. So the attraction for midstream for Enbridge was getting more of those unplanned equipment upgrades and having customers presented with the energy efficient choice as opposed to what's just on the shelf. So we did see a change in units, but also in who was participating in those offers. As far as net benefits, again, I don't have that. I think from a TRC program perspective, there's some different variables that you look into it when you're calculating that. You look at how your incentives are calculated and costs are passed through. So where in our model, where if the incentive doesn't go directly to the customer, it's claimed as an overall promotion cost, program cost. So in some cases, some of the measures were TRC negative, but when you have pass through, so in food service where the retailers sell directly to the customers, we have pass through of incentive, and we've mandated a minimum percentage of 40%. So it has changed how we're allowed to allocate costs, which impacts our calculation of TRC. if I've answered your question.
I think
That
so.
was
And
what you meant by net benefits.
kind of teed up to another good question that I'm just going to skip right to, which is Jordan mentions that they have a discretionary amount that distributors can pass on as well. But have we run into an issue where contractors get upset that distributors aren't passing through 100%? Also, do we communicate the full potential pass-through amount publicly, or do you keep that discretionary amount private and tell contractors to see your distributor for discount amounts?
Mm. I can kind of handle that one off the hop as well. So no, we don't publicly display the total incentive amount in a direct approach. So it is on some of the supporting marketing materials, but we take an up to approach and really work with the distributors on developing that language and what they were comfortable with. When we developed a lot of the marketing materials, again, one of the great benefits of the program is being able to go to the distributors and dealers and ask them the questions before we hand them a final sheet and say, you must follow this. They're able to provide the feedback in the language that they're comfortable with in developing that strategy. I can't say there are not contractors that are upset that they're not claiming the total incentive, and maybe Deanna can speak to it a little bit more, but historically, and from the perception I've had with some of the salespeople, it was not a large percentage that were proactively filling out the paperwork to get the total incentive. So finding that middle ground with the distributors and the retailers facilitating that process is a net benefit for everyone.
Yeah, I totally agree, Brendan. And it is a really good question. And it's interesting because we were very worried about that. So taking, for example, water heaters from a downstream model where we provided the incentive directly to customers, and we gave a small incentive or spiff to contractors to support the installation and the paperwork in a downstream model, we were worried. We were like, okay, this isn't going to go well. People are going to be like, okay, where's my incentive? Where's my discount on my product? And we were surprised that it wasn't as big of a barrier as we thought it was going to be. To Brennan's point, in the downstream model, we really didn't have as much uptake as we had thought. A lot of planned replacements, a lot of planned upgrades. But when it came to working with distributors in the HVAC and their ability to work with their networks to really bring the eligible equipment top of mind, it wasn't an issue. The contractors, HVAC contractors, weren't worried that they weren't getting their spiff from before. They were pleased to see the discount and the pass through to them. However, there is one gap that we have that we are looking forward, looking how we address this or how we better understand it, is what does the contractor then pass through to the customer? In a midstream model, I'm not necessarily concerned about the customer, about the incentive influencing the customer. What I'm more concerned about is how my program is influencing what that contractor is presenting to the customer as their choices. So how can I better understand how effective I've been from the distributor to the contractor to the customer? So were contractors upset that they didn't get their spiff? It wasn't a big deal. Was it more a big deal? Customers didn't understand, like, hey, I thought you had an incentive on this. And our own internal sales staff and education on the differences between downstream influence and motivators versus midstream influence and motivators, I think took more time, if I'm being honest. A little less in the market than we had expected.
That's helpful. Thanks for that context. I think we may have answered part one of your question, Earl, but part two certainly is up for grabs. But first part is, is this for new construction or only for retrofit applications? And also, what is the verification process after customers use the program that they actually installed the items?
So the program is only, well, actually it's based on, let me just pause and let me think about this. So Midstream for us is a prescriptive program. So it's based on deemed savings in our TRM. So in our TRM for the equipment that we have, it does allow new construction and retrofit because the base case has been established either as code or the standard practice. And the efficiency level that we offer in our program is above the standard practice or the code. So it is eligible in new construction or retrofit or existing buildings, whatever you want to call it. And the next question again, Katie?
Yeah, it was, just bear with me 1 second here.
And sorry, while you're looking that up, I will note that is part of the upload process from the distributor, from the dealer. They can note whether it's new construction or retrofit as well, to the best of their knowledge.
The second part of Earl's
That's
question
right,
was
because the savings are different, right, Brennan? In some of our sub-docs, the savings are different, so we need to track at the premise level, whether it's new construction or an existing building. Yes, yeah, thank you.
so part two of the question was, what was the verification process after the customer used the program that they actually installed the items?
Yeah, so I'll be honest with you, our midstream program hasn't gone through a formal impact study. However, CLEAResult also does conduct, as part of our services with them, QA/QC, not only on the accuracy of the reporting, but also circling back with participants to ensure what has happened has actually been installed. And every single sale is attached to an Enbridge gas customer. So similar to what Brennan was saying, informally or formally, we do want to ensure that what was installed is actively saving gas because we're claiming it against our DSM targets. But a formal verification has not been done. No, we have not done site visits to confirm the equipment has been installed.
And qualitative, if I can add, with the great relationships we have with a lot of the distributors and dealers, there is a lot of back and forth and knowledge sharing there. It's not common. It's not going to happen. Maybe very rarely. I won't say never. That somebody's purchasing a multi-$1,000 piece of equipment and not installing it as soon as possible, as soon as the gas is active. So if we're validating to an active account and that account is trued up to the business that the participant has reported, we can be fairly confident that it is an active account. It is going to be installed in the near future rather than being sat on for, say, a period of time.
Okay, we got a slightly technical question here. Under HVAC, do we have some limitation criteria? For example, units below a certain tonnage or incentive dollars below a certain amount allowed under the midstream program?
So
Brennan?
equipment size is part of, I believe, our water heating program. So it is a certain amount of BTUs, and that is one of, and also our condensing unit heaters, right, Brennan? There's different
That's correct.
Efficiency levels. So in HVAC equipment, even though something is condensing, our TRM might require like 29.9, I think is one of them. So it's above
Correct.
condensing. It's whatever our savings have been established to. So so what that really reinforces the importance of that QPL. So the participant can go online in the dashboard, validate the product, and also validate the address that it's an active, eligible Enbridge business, so we can get connected back on our end behind the scenes for tracking against our program. But yeah, there are different qualifications that we have to adhere to the TRM. So where there's those BTUs or, as I said, efficiency levels, the product has to meet that. Yes.
That's right. And 2 points I'll add really quickly. One is the relationship with the manufacturers, so confirming a lot of the details in the sectors that units are being installed in. And 2, AHRI is actually not used up in Canada as a resource as proactively as it is in the US, from what I understand. So we took a little bit more of a manual approach in reviewing the products, again, working with the manufacturers to identify what's being sold in our local area. So we can really bounce a lot of those ideas, a lot of the different metrics that are sold into this space to make sure they're eligible for the program and relevant to our sectors.
Great. We've got kind of a grouping of questions about what was removed. What was removed from midstream and why? What measures did Enbridge remove from food service and why? And I'm just going to throw this extra one in here. What new measures are you exploring for 2023?
So food service, I'll answer the easy one first. Food service, we took a look at other jurisdictional TRMs, and in end of 2020, 2021, we initiated research, I think, for 6 or 7 more Energy Star pieces of equipment. So we added convection ovens, rack ovens, combi ovens, high efficiency conveyor ovens, and then conveyor broilers and griddles.
That's right.
Looking ahead to 2023, we're also looking at there's an update coming to our TRM in January. We're investigating whether or not we can add Energy Star dishwashers. So there's been changes in the Energy Star efficiencies, which then further impacts our TRM. So we will be looking at potentially some Energy Star dishwashers next year, and rotisserie ovens, where we have some pending research still underway for rotisserie. For HVAC, we removed condensing storage water heaters. So in Canada, as part of the Pan American Framework, we have Amendment 15. Amendment 15 mandates the efficiency level of equipment coming into Canada. So we had some indications that storage water heaters, our concern was that condensing storage water heaters were, really high volume and were potentially going to be affecting our program in the long run if changes came in for Amendment 15. So we proactively removed storage water heaters prior to Amendment 15 and focused solely on condensing tankless water heaters. Looking ahead, what am I looking to add to HVAC? So I'm sure some of you on the call have heard about this initiative with the NEEA with regards to the RTU initiative. It is something we're also investigating. However, in order for us to claim savings, we need to have a deemed savings associated with it as part of our TRM. So we're in research. But so the RTU and then is one of the ones we're looking at for HVAC as well, and potentially adaptive thermostats, but I'm not sure that one's gonna do well for commercial. When we look at measures, I want to look at something that has very little customization, right? I don't want to have different savings for different sectors. I don't want to have different savings for different sizes. Ideally, it's something that's on the shelf next to a lower base case, and it's something that's broadly applicable across different types of buildings. So the RTU is very interesting to me, and it fits well with where we're looking to go with formalizing our relationship with manufacturers. Yeah, I don't know if I answered all the questions on that one.
If I can build and add just for a quick second on the versatility as you're speaking to, we've added all these programs, and one of the benefits of having these relationships and the scalability of a midstream program, we can make these changes and you're not focused on a new administrative lift on reporting a lot of these programs. You can introduce the product and then you can focus on the upselling of it, because it's really just slotting it into the reporting, slotting it into the administrative kind of processes that they've already built, and we get to focus on upselling those specific products within the organization without a lot of lead time into integrating them, which I think is a key benefit.
Yeah, and I'll feed off of that a little bit, Brendan. I can tell you exiting storage water heaters from midstream was a heck of a lot easier than exiting storage water heaters and tankless water heaters from downstream in 2019. So it really, when you're dealing with the supply chain, you can explain, understand, adjust your QPL, and get it in market relatively quickly, and pivot fairly quickly as well. Again, we want to continue to add value to our participants, so we want to add more measures. So when we do that, when we get things in the TRM, it is because we've established the dashboard, the QPL, we've got those set tools that we can update fairly quickly and get things into market.
Absolutely.
We've got a great question here around, are the equipment and products available under midstream? Are they restricted to just midstream, or are they also available in downstream?
Yeah, so we consciously, when we launched in 2019, we consciously removed the offers from downstream. We really wanted to understand what was driving, like how was midstream performing. We didn't want to have any interaction or double dipping of incentives and confusion in the market with downstream. We felt explaining to a contractor that there's a customer incentive and then you can get it from a distributor, but we want you to go down this path. And being new to it, we consciously said, no, we're going to draw a line. We're going to exit downstream and just have it under midstream. However, if you look at the food service midstream program, we offer the rebate through the retailer, but the retailer is doing mandatory pass-through. So that 40% pass-through, we are saying, as Brendan mentioned earlier in our marketing material, you could get up to $500 off or whatever it is on Energy Star equipment. So there is an element of working with end users where your participant is selling to them. I would also say too, when you're talking about how we're formalizing or looking to formalize our relationships with manufacturers, that could also feel a lot like midstream. So, or upstream, I should say. So there's up, mid, and down, and I think we're looking to find ways to how all of those could work together looking forward. And that is the importance of the market assessment, to really understand going forward how we can evolve our program.
Great questions coming from everyone. We'll try and tackle as many as we can in the short minutes we have left. Of course, if there's anything we can't tackle in this call, we're happy to follow up after directly with the questioner. But here's one. What steps should a prospecting distributor take to try to participate in 2023?
Well,
I can handle that one as well. Yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
There is
Brendan.
some links. Yeah, there's some links on the website. So perhaps we can provide that as a resource after this as well. There's a program resource website that highlights some of the benefits of the program. You can reach out through there. Or if you want, if my contact information is included on the session, reach out and one of our outreach staff can get in touch. We'd be happy to have you.
Another quick hard-hitting QA/QC question. Are all incentive applications for HVAC or food service QA/QC'd with pre and post pictures? I think we've probably already answered this one, but I'll let you guys go ahead.
We don't take photos. We do not take photos. Photos is not something in our supporting documentation in our evaluation of our programs that we have done typically at Enbridge. A picture can be taken anywhere. I guess now with new sort of GPS and locations, it might be a little more accurate, but no, we do not take pre and post pictures. That's something that's typically done more with, say, direct install programs or other type of installation where you're having that third-party vendor, more turnkey models, but not in this program, no.
And I will say submissions are quality controlled through the upload process, through invoice selections. A certain percentage of those of site visits are selected so that we're tracking key metrics to make sure there isn't, say, double dipping or other products coming through.
Well, we're almost at time, but I'm just going to go ahead and squeeze in one last question anyways. I'm going to kind of collapse two into one here. The first one was around, do we offer LED lights in our midstream offering? And I'll just jump in here and note that, you know, because Enbridge is a natural gas utility, lights weren't really on the table for this particular piece, but there may be more things coming here in Ontario, as we're not necessarily subject to the same regulations as you're experiencing in the US. But I'll end on a big and important question. Did we see an increase in savings coming from this program? And I'll pass that maybe over to Deanna.
Yeah, absolutely. Off the top of my head, without having numbers in front of me, if I compare the same measures 3 years in downstream before midstream, yes, there is an increase in units and an increase in savings. I will just say that because our measures are tracked prescriptively in a resource acquisition scorecard, using a TRM, if there's changes to the TRM, that does change our savings. But, you know, all things remaining the same, if you look at just the number of units downstream versus midstream, yes, we saw a lift in units moving the offers to midstream versus downstream.
Well, thank you, Deanna and Brennan, and everyone who helped to organize this presentation today. I just want to note that if you have any additional questions or you want to follow up, there is a post-webinar survey where you can pass along your contact information. We'll also try to follow up with any questions we didn't get to, but I think we tackled most of them. So thank you all so much for joining. We hope it was informative. And once again, a big thank you to Deanna, Brennan, Ray, and Emily as well for help in organizing this.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate the time.
Good morning or afternoon, depending on where you're at. Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.